Welcome to Straight No Chaser. So grab a glass and join your hosts, your girl Ann BZ, Pastor C, Thin Bad, and the Chief.
Welcome, listeners, to Straight No Chaser, where we never dilute the issues, we only serve the hard stuff. It's your girl, Ann Beezy, and as always, I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Thin Bad.
Hey.
And the Chief.
Hey.
So the sound of gunfire coming from the cafeteria, science hallway, or the gym is a sound no child should ever encounter in school. That is a phone call no parent should ever receive. Mom and Dad, they are shooting in the cafeteria, or worse, Mom or Dad, Tommy is lying in the hallway and he's not moving. Or how about getting a call from your child's school that a student was arrested who was plotting to kill the African American students? School violence occurs in some form every day across the country. It can be in the form of a simple shove, tripping, someone in the lunchroom, a schoolyard fight, or an active shooter incident. Regardless of the form, it takes running for your life to get away, and that should not be an expected normal part of the learning experience. Unfortunately, after active shooter incidents, including Columbine, Virginia Tech, Newtown, and Sojourner Douglas, among others, have impacted the lives of those communities forever. Safe schools and colleges are a must that everyone agrees upon, regardless of political, religious, or social beliefs. Like every other critical issue facing our great nation, we can't seem to agree on how to fix the problem. Some experts recommend mental health screenings, metal detectors, see-through book bags, and arming teachers, and wait for it, keeping large rocks in the schools to throw at the assailants. Students, staff,
What?
yes. Students and staff now practice after active shooter scenarios as a part of the school day. So, Thinbad and Chief, you have children in school and college. How do we fix this? So, before I even hear answers, let me remind our audience to call. Oh, actually, let's make it easier. Let's just chat tonight. We are all remote tonight, so it will be much easier to chat. So, go on Spreaker and chat with us during this live show. But I'm really anxious to hear, what do you guys think about the state of how these active shooter situations are being handled in schools across the country?
Chief, good. I'm a defer, Chief, because I can't call this one. This is a difficult situation. I don't understand it. I'm not in agreement with all these guns and in schools, and obviously I'm not for any violence in the schools like that. But this seems to be happening, more and more. Now there was a situation out there where you all were, uh, in particular. You said something about targeting African American students.
Yes. So at Art Review High School, there was a situation where three students were arrested because they were on social media posting pictures of black children or black students saying, you know, we're going to hang you, and calling them the N word and saying that their melanin stank. And it was a situation that actually became such an issue that the NAACP and Black Panthers partnered with the Clark County School District to have an open forum where about 120 parents showed up or more to find a solution to the racial tensions. They were actually thinking a riot was happening or was about to happen. It was a pretty messy situation.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, when you look at the issue of school safety, you have to look at a lot of different components. Now, of course, everyone knows about the high-profile things that a lot of the agencies all across the country are doing. They have that whole active shooter piece. children are learning what to do if the school's locked down and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the law enforcement agencies, they have every year they are enhancing their ability to go into a location and identify and subdue a suspect or suspects. And all this, of course, has been evolving since the Columbine shooting years ago, where the routine was when you had a situation like that, and most agencies at that time would have looked at it as a barricade situation. They would have waited for the SWAT team and everyone would have surrounded the building and then gone in. But we see the results of waiting to go in, which is why the whole paradigm shifted. And not only did you have the situation with that happened out in Las Vegas, but you recently had a situation on Monday in Baltimore City where a student was stabbed at Patterson High School, and there was a fight. The student was stabbed, but the school police officers got the incident under control, and there wasn't a loss of life. But still, whether you're talking about a stabbing, a simple fight in hallways, a bullying incident, you have to look at safety, holistically. And so, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the other thing that I would say to you, Sinbad and Beasley, let's compartmentalize all that other training and the active shooter piece and so forth. But the one thing that has to happen is that you have to have a level of engagement from the school community. I'm talking about the parents and all this stuff. I mean, you had a lot of people show up for that meeting in Vegas the other night because of this incident. And I applaud that and I support that. But what about the other 100 and some odd days of the year when you have PTAs where you have 3 people showing up and the student body has about 300 or 400? So
Right.
I think you have to set a tone of involvement right from day one. You can't wait until all hell is breaking loose to then show up at a meeting with the whole world to discuss safety. You should have been talking about that from day one. Now, I'm not taking away that I'm not lessening the fact that this was a horrible situation. It's unacceptable, and those involved with this need to face, the full extent of the law. But what I'm also saying is that, there has to be a level of engagement every day of the year in our schools across the nation, like you saw the other night, when all the parents came out and the assistant principal was asking for help. I'm sure he has been soliciting the assistance of the parents in that school and schools across the nation, asking for help of the parents and guardians who send those young people to school.
Right. And it seems to be the incident you were talking about, Ambezi, about brought an element into it that had not heretofore really been part of the school shootings. They were usually kind of indiscriminate, with the exception, I think there's an exception maybe in Orlando. That's not a school, but
right.
that was a shooting where it went after and some of the other shootings go after particular groups of people. But in a school shooting, it's kind of been indiscriminate at this point. It didn't matter what color you were, or who you were. Just
right.
They were going and shooting. But to start thinking, now they have to start thinking that they're singling folks out. I mean, it's all bad, no matter what. It's all just indicative of what's going on in the country. But it's crazy. I can't imagine. I mean, you can't take it for granted anymore that you're going to go out of school and come back home.
Right. Which is crazy.
And that's something every parent ought to be able to. Right.
Well, Tim, man, let me ask you a question. You have a daughter that's school age.
Mm-hmm.
Are they teaching her? Is she going through these drills in her school?
Not yet. Not here over in North Carolina. They're doing their fair share of. There's some rumblings about. There's a bill in the legislature now called the School SelfDefense Act that that's being banded around. It hasn't gone through yet, but they're calling it the School SelfDefense Act, where it would allow people with the teachers who have concealed carry permits, or full-time or part-time employees. So I'm assuming that's not even just teachers. That's anybody. That's custodial staff or anybody else. Anybody who's full or part-time employee who has a valid concealed handgun permit can carry it in school. That's one of the things that this thing they have to go through 16 hours of active shooter training, a school facility guardian program, and of course this bill sets that up if it goes through. And they have to, of course, let the chief administrator of the school know that it's up to date. But they're clearly moving along. I'm sure it's not, this is not the only. I know it's not only in North Carolina that they're considering this kind of stuff. But it hasn't trickled down. They've got enough going on with, students dealing with bullying and social media bullying and stuff like that to have to contend with this.
Right. Well, I was gonna say
in elementary school.
I was gonna say, they also are doing a similar thing in Florida where they're allowing their teachers. They're in talks of allowing their teachers to carry weapons. And honestly, I don't even know how I feel about that because, we already have situations where police feel like their lives are threatened and then they shoot innocent people. Now, we don't need students and teachers getting into altercations and then an innocent student is killed or an innocent teacher is killed. I just personally think that that's opening up a whole new can of worms. But
sure.
On the other side of it, it's getting to the point where, okay, for example, in New Zealand, they just had the mosque shootings. Do you know that within a week they tightened up their gun control laws? Within a week, 7 days, they banned assault rifles throughout the entire country. I'm standing on the fact that this is not an issue of arming everybody. I do not think the solution is to arm everybody. We need to work on our gun control laws, period. This is just ridiculous. It's getting out of hand, and it just seems like the more school shootings we have, it's like the conversation gets brought up again and then it just fizzles out again. Do we love our guns so much that we don't even know if our kids are going to be safe at school?
Well, let me offer an alternate thought on that. I think that they've had guns in America forever, since they started, forever. And I think that, certainly, and I know you'll have folks that will advocate on both sides of this, but I think what needs to happen here, I'm not necessarily sure if this is a gun law fix. I think what you need to look at here is what are the underlying factors that are creating such an atmosphere that this young person says that I'm going to target people of another race. Now, when you look at that whole scenario, there were obvious indicators there, whether it was in school or whether it was at home or someplace, that this kid was having issues. Now, there was I think they showed some pictures from Twitter and other places. So if this kid is posting this stuff on social media, I don't know whether it was Twitter or Instagram or whatever form,
it was both.
Then that's telling me, right, so he's already telegraphing what he is thinking about doing. So that's telling me that somebody is not paying attention to what this young man is doing. Now, I do agree that if you are a person and you don't have the right mental capacity to make good decisions, I don't think you should be able to have access to a gun. You shouldn't be driving, because they won't even let you drive under certain circumstances if the state shows that you have a certain capacity that doesn't allow you to do certain things. So I think from that perspective, you're absolutely right, MBV. If it's shown that Mike Blow is crazy as the day is long, Mike Blow should not have access to a gun. But if you are a person that's rational and you're not having those kind of issues, you do what you have to do. But
no.
But we have to say this, though. We have to say this. But you don't need to have a school full of guns